Hello again. I am here still at the Willapa Bay Artist in Residency program, and this is my last week. So I've been here for about 3 weeks, and it's been a great time of working on my projects and getting to know the other artists here, enjoying some delicious food, and seeing a lot of the sights around the area. And for me, this final week has started to get very reflective as I think about what this experience has meant, as well as how to transition back into my everyday life for the rest of the year, even though I think the rest of the year is going to still be a little bit not following the normal schedule, at least how it's been for the past couple of years. So I'm really trying to just be present, take in what is happening, and just enjoy that I'm here. There's all sorts of mixed feelings. I do want to go home, and at the same time, I am feeling sad about needing to leave this place. But for this particular video, I wanted to kind of discuss what I'm just kind of randomly calling the residency slump. And that is not to say I'm trying to like jinx everybody and anybody who's going on a residency is going to have a slump. I don't think that's true. I'm just hoping that talking about the potential for a slump will help anybody who faces any kind of slump when they are on their residencies. Now, I've only been on 2 other residencies before this. The first was at Residency, which is on the Bay Area Peninsula, and the other one was in Nebraska City, Nebraska at the Kimmel Harding Nelson Center for the Arts. And for both of those residencies, what I faced was a bit of a slump at the beginning. And I think in particular, Residency was tricky because I was going in 2018, and then I found myself in a pleasant cottage in the wilderness without a fast-paced schedule, with the intention of slowing down and being able to focus on my creativity, my process, my work. But it's interesting because that transition into slowing down actually took about 2 full weeks at the beginning of that residency before I felt like I was actually able to get into some sort of rhythm or flow and focus in on my creative work. And I found something similar with the Kimmel Harding Nelson residency, which I was actually only there for 2 weeks. And I think if you really look at the days, it nets out to be about 11 to 12 days. And I think I was maybe more ready for that kind of beginning slump, but it still definitely took me a few days to kind of get going. And then, of course, all of the thoughts come in of, am I being productive enough? Why am I even here? Am I wasting my time? All the imposter syndrome stuff. And I simply lay that out to be of help to anybody who may find themselves kind of struggling with those first few days to a couple of weeks. And I also know I was not the only one at either of these residencies having to deal with that. So just to put it out there, that is pretty common, especially if you think about the fact that you're going from a particular rhythm in your day-to-day and then suddenly dropped into a place where you don't have to follow that rhythm anymore. And in fact, you're invited to have a more opened up schedule, more space, more time to focus on the things that you want to focus on. Now, what was interesting for me about this particular residency is that I actually didn't face a slump at the beginning. I think this is partially because of the pandemic and the fact that I was already kind of facing a pretty open-ended schedule before coming here. So in some ways, coming here encouraged me to come up with clear tasks, clear goals of what I wanted to get out of this month. So it was interesting when I found that about halfway through, that's when I started to feel a bit of a slump, a bit of a just less motivation in the middle. I kind of went out the gate running, so to speak, and then maybe halfway through kind of started to feel like I didn't have the same pace or energy. And I would say this is not because I was going too fast or anything. I think I was still trying to be pretty cognizant of, taking time for myself, protecting my energy, all that good stuff. I think it just happened. And then to add on top of that, by the end of the third week, I unfortunately got under the weather with something. I don't know exactly what. It wasn't COVID. I tested twice and I got 2 negative results. But something that kind of just lasted 2.5 days. And then I started to feel like I lost 2.5 days while I was here. And then I kind of needed to grapple with all of that over the weekend. And that brings me to today. I'm recording this on a Monday. And I think I needed to just kind of revise as I went my thoughts around my tasks and my plan. And I even had to do that when I first arrived, realizing that some of the things that I wanted to accomplish were maybe a lot to stuff in to a month. So I had already pulled it back, but I found that I needed to pull things back even more once I started to kind of feel this slump in the middle. I don't know that I can necessarily explain all the things that went into why this particular mid slump happened. It could have been actually kind of the realization that I am not at home or that I was missing home. It could have been just my own emotional dynamics here. It could have been just patterns shifting. I don't know. I don't know the exact reason. But I think having gone through the beginning slumps of my previous residencies helped me a ton when I started to experience a middle slump here. Similar to what I said about resilience and grit in that particular video, this journey wasn't necessarily like, oh, I've learned this thing and look how easy it is to get through the slump. It was more just realizing, this is what's happening. Great. So I'll be ready. I will try to be as open as possible to what are the things that are coming up or that I need to focus on, or how much do I need to rest? Questions like that. And I think I got through it. It's interesting because now there's only like 5 full days left and my brain is already kind of thinking about packing and leaving and needing to return. And like I mentioned, I am getting into a much more reflective mode as we're getting to the last few days. And maybe, I don't know, maybe that was what needed to happen. It's almost like the weeks swapped when compared to like Jurassic, where it was the first 2 weeks that were less productive, more reflective, and then I got more productive as the weeks went on. And then here, it's been interestingly backwards, where I started off a lot more productive, and then in the middle, I started to, I don't know, things, I needed to reflect on things, and definitely as I'm starting to leave, I'm getting more reflective on just what I am working on and where I want to be heading. I imagine the pandemic has a large part to do with this. Just feeling these markers of, something like a 4-week residency is a big deal after 2 years of nothing like this. And so I think there is a lot to kind of sit with and think through, and maybe I'll share some of those things once I know what they are. But if I could sum it all up, I would say if a slump happens, I don't think you need to expect a slump, but if one happens, roll with it. Try to flow with it and see what there is to reflect on or learn. It doesn't necessarily mean you're not doing the right thing. It doesn't mean you're wasting your time. It could just be that your emotions, your creativity is needing that at that moment. And it might not follow a particular template of it's going to happen at the beginning or it's going to happen in the middle. Maybe it'll happen in waves. Maybe it'll happen at the very end. I don't know. I think, though, I have talked to enough people where this is a shared experience, and a lot of different people have expressed that they might feel like that bit of a imposter syndrome when it happens. So I guess I'm trying to just normalize the fact that if there are slumps, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are doing anything wrong as the artist. So I think that's all I really had to share for this round. I will be driving back down later this week. Of course, by the time you all see this, I will have already been home for a bit. And we'll see what it's like getting out of this really beautiful bubble known as an artist residency. Let me know your thoughts, your experiences with facing slumps, or maybe you're the kind of person that never has, and share your strategies or thoughts on how that is or why that is and how you think that's happening for you, because that's pretty cool because I don't think I can control it. But that's all for now. Till next time, and I hope you all stay safe and well.